Surprise, surprise. Surprise, surprise.
Surprise! It's a bumper season finale edition of And Just Like Crap. And like a travelling carnival with an extremely loose understanding of ride safety, there'll be body parts flying all over the place by the time we're done. Say goodbye to your loved ones, like and subscribe, and let's get into it. Miranda's got 2 hatchets to bury before this season of And Just Like That is done. And in defiance of my long-held suspicion that she's a serial killer, opts not to do so in the backs of her enemies. Hatchet 1 concerns Steve, who I guess hasn't had a conversation with his estranged wife since she initiated divorce proceedings, despite her coming and going from his house like it's a timeshare. Inspired by some other events, which we'll get to, and Carrie's continued interference, Miranda locates Mr. Brady at the Coney Island boardwalk. That's where, inspired to embark on a new beginning after his unceremonious dumping, he's bought a clam shack, which is apparently what he gets in place of a happy ending. Let's hope New York's 50-something single women are really into men who come home every night smelling like a fisherman's footlocker. Full of self-pity, Miranda feigns surprise at Steve's understandably downbeat opinion of his last couple of years, as though an out-of-the-blue divorce might have been one of the last things left on his bucket list. His consolation prize is that Miranda finally admits that
you were smart about us buying the house and moving to Brooklyn when we did. And you were right about us being good parents.
Jury's still out on that one, guys. They agree to be friends and draw a definitive line under their marriage, with Steve in particular issuing his strongest assurance yet that he'd rather walk through broken glass than hop aboard the Hobbs Express to hell again. A wise move, which nevertheless doesn't rule out the possibility of it one day careening off the tracks and turning him into a fine mist. Still concerned that she's been dropping exes like a Kardashian, Miranda decides to turn up unannounced at Che's comeback stand-up gig. A decision about as wise as Chris Rock popping out of the cake at Will Smith's next birthday party.
Keep my wife's name out your
Because Che embarks on an absolutely unforgivable, inarguably undeserved character assassination of Ms. Hobbs. It does give Miranda a chance to speak for the audience, though, when she labels the set
Not funny! Not funny!
which is what I've been saying all season. Che attempts to justify their hateful diatribe as a necessary function of comedy, which might work as a defense were it not for the material being about as funny as an early period in a Shark Tank. Aside from which, exaggerated for comedic effect or not, their supposed issues with Miranda aren't even based in reality.
I just got out of an 8-month relationship with a married straight white woman. Yeah, she brought 4 people into our bed. Me, her husband, and her son. Yeah, my lady was very confused. All over the LGBTQIA plus menu. She was confused about everything.
But nothing to do with you creating an environment as radioactive as a Chernobyl mud bath, right, Che? I'll deal with their insane motivations in a bit, but suffice to say that this feels like the writers admitting defeat and giving viewers some real reasons to hate them. Mission accomplished, I guess? Naturally, Che and Miranda make amends by the end of the season, but it's a weird way to play all of this. Miranda might be trying not to let her exes fall out of her life, but that's a poor excuse for maintaining a connection with someone who has a Jussie Smollett relationship with the truth. Miranda ends the season grabbing drinks with English BBC correspondent Joy, who she met during a trip to the UN. And considering that there appears to have been an unspoken determination made about her sexual orientation, that's likely to be the only BBC Ms. Hobbs gets for the foreseeable future. This season finale in Who Gives a Shit news? Lisa's documentary film is turned into a full series by PBS, sparking an existential crisis about whether she can continue to work flat out and raise a screaming crap factory. The function of this storyline appears to be manufacturing an opportunity for the show to briefly, barely comment on recent events in America, which I'm certain, were I to say them out loud, YouTube would class as controversial. In any event, Lisa doesn't want a smash motion, but loses the baby a short while later. And despite having double the runtime of a Sex and the City episode, and just like that, once again speeds past any sort of meaningful contemplation on a serious topic. I'd like to think they'll pick up the fallout from this storyline in season 3 and do something interesting with it. But honestly, we're just as likely to see Lisa wake up and realise the last year was a dream caused by spoiled zucchini chips. Lizette inherits Carrie's old apartment, a contrivance driven by her having been kicked out of the one downstairs. There are multiple references to the unspecified but apparently extremely generous price that Carrie's selling it to her for.
For the price you got this apartment, the price you sold this apartment for is insanity.
Well, for the price I gave her my apartment.
A generosity she's evidently very keen to make sure everybody and their wife knows about. Seema drops a bollock when mid-coitus she blurts out a declaration of love to new boyfriend Ravi. Her concern is that she's given away her power too early to a man in the sights of many other women, and obliquely refers to not having vetted him yet. Why am I suddenly concerned that she doesn't abide by the Geneva Conventions? When Ravi's required to relocate to Egypt for several months, Seema goes full Fatal Attraction on him. He gently talks the proverbial bunny out of her claws and reassures her that he's in it to win it, even though she won't go with him. A development that only seems to happen in service of making sure Carrie's misery has some company. But we'll get to that. Naya gets some closure when ex-husband Andre mistakes an Instagram comment for an olive branch and invites her to his and Trailer Park Swift's baby shower. Whereas I would have frisbeed my laptop out of the nearest window at the inclusion of a registry, Naya opts to buy them an expensive stroller as a flex. And if anyone would like to similarly flex on me by sending a super chat, my self-esteem is ready and willing to be taken down a few notches. If you cast your minds back to the first episode of this season, you may recall that I thought we'd be seeing more of Toussaint, aka Warwick Brown, aka Gary Dourdan. Sure enough, he reappears in Carrie's storyline and winds up back at Naya's place. And with a CSI level 3 in the house, that means she's going to have to find somewhere else to conceal Heidi's body. Who knows what the hell the writers think they're doing with Che. The show seems to have settled on them having a huge stick up their ass about people who haven't fully figured out their identity. Through some seriously messed up logic, said people are supposedly to blame for Che's belief that the world is forcing them to apologise for being non-binary. Whereas I'd like them to apologise for making Amy Schumer look funny by comparison. This outlook, ironically, demonstrates a level of ignorance as entirely unrecognised by the show as it is utterly pig-shit stupid. Made worse by their pairing with Toby, a cloying groupie who exists only to tell Che that they're right about everything, and to throw in a few more LGBTQIA+ terms that the writers want us to know that they've learned.
No, you know what? I'm not sorry.
Good. Don't be. Own it all of your feelings. There's nothing hotter than a strong NB person. No, I'm sorry, I didn't even ask if you were open to being called NB, I just...
The issue here, as far as I see it anyway, is that Che is being used as a proxy for real-world issues that just aren't happening to the character we're seeing on screen. What we do see is Che acting in a variety of gross ways and refusing to feel genuinely sorry because having to respect other people is somehow conformity. It makes zero sense. With a different character having different experiences, this might have been something. But Che blaming the gripes against them on everyone else's ignorance is like John Wayne Gacy claiming that the police only arrested him because they were scared of clowns. Charlotte's opening gambit in the finale is to sell some Alex Israel artwork to English exile and singer of the second worst modern Bond song, Sam Smith. Sam gets 5 lines, possibly because any more than that risks them going off script and committing another ignorant faux pas.
I read an article a few months ago by Sir Ian McKellen, and he said that no openly gay man had ever won an Oscar, and if this is the case, even if it isn't the case, I wanted to...
They also come dressed in an outfit that I'm certain has George Michael on a spin cycle in his grave, accessorized with their own version of the Carrie nameplate necklace. So, production oversight, stupid Easter egg, or are we expected to believe that English pop stars in this universe consider Carrie so iconic that they're emulating her? Doesn't matter, thankfully they're gone before we have to work it out. Charlotte's main beef in the finale is another example of the show trying to paint in fine detail when all it can be trusted with is crayons. Shah's return to her art dealing career is frequently undermined and interrupted by her kids, and to be fair, that is something she warned them not to do. But all we see is Charlotte's level of parental involvement going from the Brady Bunch to shameless overnight, so it's unclear who's actually in the wrong. Her new Gen Z colleagues who say things like,
Big yikes, girl!
And
You are the main character.
further complicate matters by inviting her out for celebratory drinks. They claim it's for wringing over $100,000 out of Sam Smith, but I'd just as soon pat her on the back for getting their turquoise ass off the premises. And it's during this celebration that drunk Charlotte makes a welcome reappearance, ranting about the responsibilities inherent to the life she spent the better part of 40 years chasing, and giving her phone a margarita bath. Drunk Charlotte then stages a debut performance for her family, before bringing out hungover Charlotte, who is less appreciative of her alter ego's exploits. She and Harry wrap their nothing plot for the season with a mutual agreement to share the parental load more evenly, which is fair. But by now, I would be gleefully suggesting that the real solution would be to fake their deaths and leave the kids to fend for themselves. I give it 24 hours before Rock's waving around a pig's head on a stick.
I love you, G.
Ask and ye shalt receive. After my whinging that And Just Like That wasn't doing anything real with Anthony and Giuseppe's burgeoning love affair, they try something new for the finale, which, at least initially, is more than you can say for Anthony. Following a spot of allegedly expert up the bum no babies, Anthony thinks his job is done. But Giuseppe has other ideas, and to his sexagenarian lover's horror, makes it known that he'd like to park his Big Mac truck right in that little garage. And it's a rapid descent from there into some icky toxic masculinity rubbish about him not being the woman. Stanford makes a weak attempt to imply to them all that he's a top, something which I'd bet could only be true if the word top was an acronym for taking oily pee. Now, I'm not going to explain the many ins and outs of the gay bedroom here, for I have neither the time nor the appropriate anatomical models. What I don't think is a thing is how the show paints versatility as largely the younger generation's crusade. Gen Z didn't invent the flip-flop, careful where you Google that, any more than boomers invented cruising up the Hershey Highway. We also get a final check-in on Stanford when Carrie discloses that he's staying in Japan as a Shinto monk. It's a weird way to end this story, but, and you don't hear me say this very often, I do buy it. Besides which, it is a sweet tribute to departed actor Willie Garson, allowing his character to live peacefully on while his friends raise a Cosmo in his honor. A very rare win. But that's enough schmaltz, back to the horror show. Giuseppe turns out to have taken Anthony's reluctance to accept goods via the freight entrance rather hard, evidenced by his sudden threat to move to Rome. This, arguably overdramatic reaction does force Anthony to reconsider his attitudes to same-sex gender roles, and to announce his love for Giuseppe. and leads to the pair of them making up and making out in Carrie's closet. Part of what's now starting to seem like a campaign, hell-bent on leaving DNA samples in every friend's apartment. We leave the freshly minted lovebirds back in the bedroom, where Anthony's losing what he diplomatically calls his virginity to Giuseppe's lung disturber. And if I'm reading his face correctly, hating every single second. But love is all about give and take, sometimes literally. I'm gonna get that on a throw pillow. To the surprise of nobody, Carrie's race to the finish line with Aiden encounters an entirely expected tripping hazard in the form of Wyatt. The youngest Shaw spawn puts his whole p*** into getting his dad back from New York, which translates to a cocktail of drugs and alcohol, Grand Theft Auto, and eventually crashing into a tree. At the very least, you can't accuse him of half-assing things. While this Virginian crime spree is unfolding, Aiden is obliviously committing a few crimes against himself. The night before he and Carrie move into their new apartment, he really drives home the show's revisionist belief that Carrie is a sweet angel who has never done a thing wrong. He accepts responsibility for their broken engagement, the lease on the apartment next to hers, even going so far as to imply that him being mad at her for any of her past hijinks is also a character flaw on his part. And just like that, has a real problem with how to deal with past misdeeds, to the point that it kind of feels like they genuinely think that Carrie hasn't put a foot wrong in 25 years. At no point is she allowed to learn and grow from her mistakes. She's just absolved of all of them. It's bizarre. But we don't get a chance to delve any further into that, because ex-wife Kathy calls to drop the news that Wyatt Twerp has attempted to give a tree an 80-mile-per-hour hug. Now, you might be wondering, Krusty, why do you think this is Wyatt trying to force Aiden back home? Well, listen to Aiden's description of what the little twerp did.
He got in a fight with his mom. He snuck out of the house and hitched 30 miles back to the farm. And then he got in my truck to drive back. And he hit a tree.
Now, listen to his excuse for doing it.
He said, I want to sleep at my dad's house.
Then why were you driving back, Wyatt? Why didn't you just go to sleep at the farm, Wyatt? Why is nobody else asking you these questions, Wyatt? But first, a distraction. Because the entire universe of And Just Like That seems to exist within a genie's lamp, Carrie just so happens to win a raffle prize. A private dinner at home for 16, courtesy of a Michelin-starred chef. And just when she's saying goodbye to her old apartment. What will she do, I wonder? Among the guests at this dinner ex machina are Smoke and Jackie, who Carrie has evidently forgiven for ruining her Met Gala plans and being the worst person alive, respectively. The dinner itself, despite the hype, is a new level of nouveau riche bullshit, wherein an entire table of people ooh and ah over a plate containing 2 olives and what appears to be the discharge from a farmyard medical procedure. Dessert is ruined by Carrie, who leads her guests in a twee word game where they have to announce what they'd like to let go of. Naturally, when it comes to her turn, she launches into a stupid monologue about freeing yourself from expectation in order to allow something wonderful and new to happen, which feels like slowly climbing on a roller coaster that has a history of freak accidents. After the party, Big Chunder Mountain claims its next victim. That's when we discover that manipulative Torag and world's highest driver 2023, Wyatt Shaw, actually got his way. Aiden finally walks back into Carrie's old apartment, but only to tell her that they can't be together until Wyatt is 20. Which is, presumably, when his father expects him to be tried as an adult for whatever terrible crime he's destined to commit. The parameters of this weird arrangement are left undefined. Mr. Shaw says he doesn't want to lose Carrie, but won't come to visit her or allow her to visit him. Does that mean she's free to date other people in the meantime? Is she allowed to call or text? Wouldn't it be easier to leave Wyatt somewhere in the woods and let nature take its course? Apparently not. Besides which, it's a bit of a mystery what 5 years is supposed to fundamentally change in a 14-year-old who got strunk and f***ed a truck up a tree because his dad got a new girlfriend. But I guess the show had to do something to remove Aiden from the equation, and it was either this or have Carrie introduce him to Big's Peloton. Anyway, screw all of that. The finale marks the triumphant return of Kim Cattrall's Samantha Jones to the Sex and the City universe, courtesy of the much-trailed phone call between she and Carrie. It's 1 minute and 15 seconds of apparently extremely costly but nonetheless important work by Ms. Cattrall. Right off the bat, early reports that SJP was unaware of the cameo until its first reporting in June were probably wide of the mark. Unless the New York portion of the scene was redone in what would have to have been some pretty hasty reshoots, she had to have known that Cattrall was supposed to be on the other end of the line. Unless, of course, she doesn't understand how loudspeaker works, which, if she's anything like Carrie in real life, I'm inclined to believe.
This is for Rachel, you big, fat, white, nasty, smelling, fat bitch.
It was smart of them to have Sam appear in the first 2 minutes of the last episode, so as not to overshadow what they were trying and failing to achieve in the following 40. Because, to be honest, it was like looking through the windows of the Ritz-Carlton on your way home to a mattress behind McDonald's. Maybe it's amplified by her previous absence, but having Cattrall back, clearly having a whale of a time filming without any of the people she's been bad-mouthing for years, is a jolting reminder of what And Just Like That has been lacking. Its sense of fun. Whether this results in a more substantial return is on the lower end of likely, but the very positive reaction to such a tiny cameo couldn't help but have given Kim Cattrall some serious negotiating power. Whether she does anything with it is up to her, but this show needs the kind of energy that a character like Samantha brings to the table if it's ever going to become more than what it currently is. Mind you, I might be reaching, but Carrie's face after that call ends looks to me like a little bit of SJP came out. If you listen closely, you can hear the cogs turning. This Last video's top comment came courtesy of Remurdre, whose sister had a run-in with a mother-in-law keen on malicious compliance. Although, truth be told, that sounds like a good low-effort burn, and so I might steal it for myself. This video's question is, did Aiden have the right to ask Carrie to wait for 5 years? And was she right to agree? Sound off in the comments below. Either way, thanks for watching, don't forget to like and subscribe, and remember, if you can't be good, be crusty.